Now, I'm sure you have been saturated with information about what happened in Uvalde, Texas. And the thing that I think we all need to realize is that this doesn't just happen to someone else. This doesn't just happen in another town. This doesn't just happen to some community we read about. It can happen anywhere. And in this town, 18-year-old Salvador Ramos did the unthinkable. And like is the case in so many of these situations, he telegraphed what he was going to do. There were Instagram posts with him with firearms, deadly firearms, one being an AR-15. He sent some private posts. He said, "I'm going to shoot my grandmother." His second post, "I shot my grandmother." His third post, within 15 minutes of the first, "I'm going to shoot an elementary school." 15 minutes later, en route, he crashes his truck in a concrete ditch near Robb Elementary School. We've heard what AR-15s are. You can do a tremendous amount of damage when you can put out that much firepower. Now, I don't care where you stand on the Second Amendment. Ask the common sense question: what does an 18-year-old boy need with that kind of a weapon? What does any civilian need with that kind of a weapon? And if a child, an 18-year-old boy, can get his hands on that, a 15-year-old, 14-year-old can get their hands on that, do they have the maturity to manage it? You're looking right now at the ammunition that this particular weapon put out. This is a serious round of ammunition that will do tremendous damage to whatever it hits. Now, again, I'm not going to go back over all of these tragic details with you, but this young man enters the back door and makes his way down a series of short hallways before he enters a classroom, where he opens fire with this rapid fire weapon, is what we now believe, and kills 19 students and 2 teachers. How long did it take before someone responded? That's in controversy right now. Parents are frustrated, saying police officers did not respond fast enough. Parents were talking about charging the school themselves, trying to get something done because they knew that their children were in there. It's reported that a Border Patrol officer ultimately shot and killed Ramos. It's also been reported that he legally purchased 2 AR platform rifles on 2 separate dates in May, reportedly around $3,000. Where did he get that money? Did somebody buy these for him? Why was he in possession of these weapons? Most people greatly underestimated how much of a problem this is in America today. And I'm not talking about mass shootings. I'm just talking about school shootings right now. And I want to tell you that the trend is getting worse. In 2021, there was an all-time high number of school shootings. Now, it depends on how you define a school shooting. And I want to tell you that the Center for Homeland Defense and Security K through 12 school shooting database defines it this way. They define a school shooting as any incident where a firearm was brandished or fired at a school. Doesn't mean somebody was killed, but a gun showed up at a school and was brandished. And from January 1st through December 5th, the database reported 222 incidences. Now, if you divide that up by the number of average weeks in a school year, which is, we'll pick 36, that's 6.16 incidences per week. Now, if your jaw's not on the floor, I would be surprised. This is clearly headed in the wrong direction. What's it going to take for us to wake up and say we have to do something? More than 311,000 students have experienced gun violence since Columbine occurred. That's according to the Washington Post. This is out of control. What does it take to get people's attention? What does it take for us to say we have to do something different? What's causing this to happen? Threats, just threats in the first month of the school year have gone up. September of 21, they identified 151 threats compared to a 3-year average of 29. What is going on? This has to be analyzed. It has to be thought about. And actual shootings doubled from the previous year at 55, up from 24. We need to not be thinking about, hey, how can we keep doing the same thing? We need to be thinking about how can we do something different. So the question is always, well, all right, let's identify the profile. Who's doing this shooting? Sadly, I can tell you there is no profile, and we don't have the psychological tools to identify who's going to be a shooter. But there are some commonalities, there are some indicators, and I'm going to share with you what some of those are. These are often current or former students of the school they go to shoot up. It's not always the case, and they are often in some type of mental, emotional, or social crisis. And being bullied was common. Now, do they go back and shoot the bully? Occasionally, but typically that's not the case. Shooters go and aggress not against their transgressors, but against surrogates. They go shoot against somebody that's just a stand-in. They just go shoot somebody that is available, somebody that they aren't threatened by. These are people that have experienced observable, now I want to emphasize observable, mental health symptoms in 3 main categories: psychological, behavioral, and neurological. I'm emphasizing observable because people notice that they're behaving unusually. About half of them have received 1 or more mental health services, so they've come to the attention of mental health providers, so they're not completely in the dark and about these people. They are on somebody's radar. Most typically, it's depression or suicidal ideation. Some have anxiety. A much smaller percentage than you would think present with anger. They're depressed. They've been shunned by society. They've been through some type of rejection experience. And our number one need is acceptance. Our number one fear is rejection. And they've had some trauma in that regard. And they very frequently have negative home life factors such as divorce, drug use, someone in the family, a mother or father, have criminal charges, and domestic violence is common. So they exhibit these concerning behaviors, and that contradicts the myth that, oh, it's the nicest guy, it's the last person I would have ever thought of. That's not true. And here's a very troubling element. They're often the product of the contagion effect. Now, what do I mean by that? They're inspired by other school shooters. I say that's particularly troubling because when you see what has happened in Uvalde, that predicts that it's very likely that there's going to be a repeat of this in the near future. Someone out there that is really desperate, really tragic, is going to see what has happened here, and they're going to become obsessed with it, and they're going to react to it. Maybe in a week, maybe in a month, who knows? And one of the most confounding things about this is they often tell others what they're going to do before they do it. Last year, we covered another shocking school shooting that happened just days after Thanksgiving. On November 28, 2021, 15-year-old Ethan Crumley walked into Oxford High School in a Detroit suburb and shot and killed 4 students. Some students actually stayed home because they said they knew what was going to happen and they didn't feel safe going to school. Now, this crime not only stood out at the time as being the deadliest school shooting since Parkland, but for being the first where a shooter's parents have been charged with crimes linked to the shooting.
They basically gave him a license and permission to kill. Did they know the gun was in the backpack? Did they know the plan, what he was going to carry out? Why not bring him home if there's trouble?
Isn't their job to know where the gun is? If the gun is missing from home and their child is being called in at school and he's drawing pictures of bullets and blood, and they say, "Where's our gun?" And he was shooting it the day before. Isn't it endemic upon a parent to say, "Wait a minute, this isn't a coincidence"? Now, we've talked about a couple instances where the individual apparently purchased the guns. And in Texas, for example, you're not permitted to possess a firearm if you're under 18. Many of these school shooters are under 18. So where are they getting the guns? Research tells us they get these guns at home. They get these guns when they are not properly secured. So you cannot tell me that these families don't know that they have someone in their family having a problem fitting in, coming into conflict with authority. They should be concerned with depression, they should be concerned with suicide, and they should be concerned with having guns readily available to someone with that mindset, even if they are just concerned with the young man shooting himself. But in so many of these instances, we find that they simply walked into another room of the house and picked up a gun that was readily available. Now, what am I saying here? These shootings can be stopped, but it doesn't do any good if it just raises awareness and everyone is heartbroken and sends their prayers. Please do that. But along with doing that, we need to write to our congressmen, to our senators, state and federal, and insist that there needs to be a program for universal threat assessment. There needs to be a protocol where we add a crisis response team. If so many people hear that something like this is going on, why aren't they doing anything about it? They're not doing anything about it because they don't know what to do. They don't know who to call. They don't know what to say. They don't want, if there's somebody that they think, oh, this is a dangerous individual, they certainly don't want to irritate that person. They don't want to feel like, hey, I ratted them out, I tattled on them, now they're going to be mad at me, so I'm in danger. We need to have a situation where we can give students an anonymous, protected way to report concerns, to report a post on Instagram, hearing something in the lunchroom where they can report that and someone can reach out to that student and find out, do they need help? And do they fit a profile? Do they have a home life that is tumultuous? Are their guns easily accessible inside the home? Are all of those factors there that make up a volatile situation? Because make no mistake, we have to focus on prevention, not intervention. Why? Because almost half of school shootings are over in the first few minutes. If there's an active shooter, of course you want to call 911. But the truth of the matter is, even if you have an officer on site, that officer is likely to react to the shooting, not stop the shooting. That means we need to prevent it before it happens. If that armed guard is at one end of the hallway and the shooter is at the other end of the hallway with a weapon that discharges 400 rounds per minute, a lot of death can be dealt before even a responsible officer can go into action. You can see 44% of attacks are 1 minute or less, another 24% are 1 to 2 minutes. So you've got 68% of attacks are 2 minutes or less. So having a guard on campus, unless they are standing real close to that attacker, they're going to be reacting to what has already happened instead of preventing it from happening. Do I think there should be an officer on campus? Of course there should be someone there, but we need to put at least as much effort in preventing that shooter from ever picking up that weapon, and that means there has to be a system where they are identified by the system, where somebody has a place to go, someone to tell. Colorado has such a program called Safe to Tell. It's a statewide anonymous reporting tool which accepts tips 24/7, and they have had 19,861 tips in the 2018-2019 year. This gives them the opportunity to react before someone picks up a gun and steps on campus. It could be something that we can look at. 2 teachers and 19 children are dead. Almost half of school shootings are over in the first few minutes. What do you say to your children? Where does this kid get money for an $1,800 assault rifle?
New Dr. Phil. Check your local listings.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.